Welcome, everybody, to episode 352 of WordPress Weekly for Tuesday, May 14th, 2019. I'm your host, Jeff Chandler, joined by John James Jacoby. And if I sound a little different, I hope it's an improvement over the last week's episode. I haven't been using the professional mic in a while because we encountered some sort of audio issues where my voice would come in and out and couldn't figure out what it is. So we're going to give it another try this week. And I actually talked John into hooking up his microphone. So even though he's sitting in an awkward position, he should sound better than last week.
It is a little awkward. So people watching on video are going to wonder why I'm pointing sideways, but the mic is hooked up. We both should sound better than we've sounded in weeks. And Jeff looks the same.
Yes. And by the way, yes, you did hear that right. We're doing the show on a Tuesday. Somebody has to see the doctor tomorrow.
No, doctor's on Thursday. Carrie's birthday is tomorrow.
That's what
it is.
That's even more.
So usually for Carrie's birthday, we go out and spend the day, have a picnic, go do something.
It's her day.
So it's her day. So tomorrow we have the day off. No show tomorrow. Doing it today instead.
All right. So before we get started here, John, I want to ask you something. Isn't it something that in the WordPress ecosystem, in this small little cottage industry that there exists with WordPress, that by not capitalizing a certain letter in a word can actually drive away business or make you look incompetent in the WordPress community?
It's very timely that you bring that up, Jeff.
And what I'm talking about is capitalizing the P in WordPress. Right. And we've talked about this numerous times on the show before, and I've said that 5, 6, 7 years ago I was on the bandwagon of yes, you should capitalize the P. That's the way it's spelled, and if you don't do it, then I guess you're a moron. But I've calmed down to that realization, and now it's just like, look, I don't care. It's WordPress, WordPress. Yes, there is a correct way of spelling it, but if you happen to get it wrong, or if it's wrong on your website, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
It doesn't make you a moron. It's just It's not capitalized.
I really like that we have that WordPress core itself has the function to swap it. I know people didn't like that.
Capital P dang it filter will go down in history as the filter that, boy, was I upset. Right. I mean, capital P for pissed off is what I was back in the day when that filter was added to WordPress. And it legitimately had broke some things dealing with naming conventions and issues with media files and whatnot. And I just thought it was ridiculous to add a filter to automatically replace the lowercase p with a capital P. But all these years later, well, what the hell? It's already in there.
Companies like Apple, they have autocorrect set up into their own dictionaries for every one of their own products. If you type Mac Pro in lowercase, it uppercases the M and the P, so it's an uppercase proper name, Mac Pro. Like, this is something that everyone kind of does, like it or not. And frankly, I think it improves the communication of all of these sort of proper nouns that they should be capitalized in those ways.
Which, by the way, I think I came across a recent track ticket. It might have been a suggestion by David Bissett, but I think it was implemented where they're going to start doing this now in Buddy Press and Baby Press, capitalizing or at least making sure the word is spelled correctly with the correct capitalizations.
I think they did it on the meta track so that whenever it's mentioned in the forums around WordPress.org specifically, that it'll happen on any of the comments or the forum posts in there. We have yet to do that in the BB's proper, and we probably should.
Lowercase BB filter.
I mean, that's one of those things, because even at the beginning of a sentence, iOS or macOS wants to capitalize the first B in BB Press, and then you have to go back and hit delete. Like, it's kind of a pain. So there probably should be something in there for that. But I agree, like the uppercase P was a thing, and it still is a thing that proves that you're paying attention and that you're detail oriented and whatever else. It is one of those one of those hints or clues that you maybe do or do not know what it is that you are talking about. But I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you are now, that when someone doesn't capitalize the P in WordPress, that I am probably going to be the last person to call them out for not doing that.
I mean, look, you'll notice it. I'll notice it, but big deal.
I think the for context, like other people have brought up other projects like MailChimp. Is the C capitalized or not? Or in PHP, is it uppercase PHP or is it all lowercase PHP?
Or MySQL, isn't it capital M, lowercase y, and a capital S, capital Q, capital L?
It is. It does certainly look that way, but when you look on the website or look at their logo, it looks like it's lowercase m and y with an uppercase SQL. Does it matter? Is that the official way that it should be? Who knows what it should be? Like when you are not part of that community and when you're not just steeped in the lore of why it's important, imagine going in to submit a patch to MySQL core and having some 10-year-old contributor go, yeah, you don't know what you're doing because you didn't capitalize MySQL correctly. Like, I would not go back. It would be a bad experience. It would not be very welcoming or encouraging to someone who's like trying to do the right thing. So I'm just not going to correct people when I see it because there are just too many abbreviations for too many platforms now that I'm going to do it wrong. And I hope that in those projects that I don't get shamed for that.
And folks, this is WordPress. This is the WordPress you know and love, where we get to spend the first 5 or 6 minutes on the show talking about capital P in the word WordPress.
That's right. That's right.
That's what WordPress is. Speaking of WordPress, we did have a major release happen last week, WordPress 5.2. I want to say Jaco, named after bassist Jaco or Jaco Pastorius. Is available for download. Everybody should have updated to it by now. And I did something a little differently in writing the release post on the Tavern for this. Usually we talk about the list of features after the name, but this time I started off by recognizing the contributors, which I think is something I'm going to start doing more often. Let's recognize the people who created this software before we get to what they actually created. I thought it was pretty cool. And there were 327 people who contributed to this release, with 109 of those being first-time contributors. It was led by Matt Mulwig, Josepha Hayden, and Gary Pendergast. And included in this list of contributors was Alex Viper 007 Bond Mills, who passed away of leukemia earlier this year. Rest in peace, Alex. So I thought that was notable and pretty cool to see that his contributions still live on and they're still ending up in newer versions of WordPress. And by the way, he does have a few uncommitted patches and tracks, so it's possible we'll see his name come up in future releases of WordPress. Now, one of the big deals about WordPress 5.2 is that it bumped up the minimum PHP version required to run to 5.6.20. Now, if you're running an older version, you'll need to update PHP before upgrading to WordPress 5.2. On the WordPress.org website, on the requirements page, which, by the way, is a weird wording because it's requirements, but it's really a list of recommendations. They recommend updating the PHP version 7.3 or above. And as you can imagine, seeing these PHP bumps is years in the making, and many developers out there have rejoiced that now we are starting to see some progress on this front.
But WordPress will always be behind. Like, that's the reality.
Oh, no doubt.
This, right? Like, we went through this the first time when we switched from PHP 4 support to PHP 5. Like, there were a number of syntactical improvements that happened between 4 and 5, things like autoloaders, magic getters, whatever else that like for PHP 4 didn't have, that WordPress was unable to take advantage of. And the effort to clean up the code to be compatible with both versions of PHP was not unlike what will happen now to be compatible, or has been happening, with PHP 7, 7.1, 2, and now 3. There are little tweaks and things that happen all over the place that it's going to be an ongoing effort. WordPress will always be a little bit behind, but it is good to see the requirements page updated. That's a big deal.
In WordPress 5.1, That introduced the site health check features, which were added to inform users of outdated PHP versions. This version, WordPress 5.2, actually builds on top of that foundation. And there are 2 new pages that you can browse in the WordPress backend now. If you visit Tools, Site Health, it'll give you common, it'll debug and give you common configuration issues that it detects on your site. And it'll show you critical issues. For example, we have an issue, and we've had it for a while now with Jetpack, where it says jetpack.com is detecting an error. You'll see that in the site health area. And it also gives you a percentage. So it kind of gives you a percentage of how healthy your website is. And I noticed we did get a few comments from somebody that says they weren't a fan of seeing a percentage of that meter. And there's a list of recommended improvements that you'll see with the site health check test results. Now, I think in these tests, I believe if you set some things up like you turn automatic updating off, I think that actually triggers an issue or an error. And now there are some cases where you might need to set things up that way, or that's your preferred way of doing things. So I don't know how they're going to address that issue. However, there is a plugin out there, and hopefully I get to it and write about it today by William Earnhardt. It's a site health check manager. So there are filters in place that you can use in core to manage these tests, disable them, add on to them, modify them. But this plugin actually allows you to do it with the UI. You don't have to mess with any filters or code. It does it for you. So it's a great plugin there. And if additional plugins like Jetpack, which just recently had a major release, they have actually included their own set of tests for their plugin. So all in all, just a lot of information that you could check there, and it should help with, by and large, the troubleshooting aspects of trying to figure out what's going on with the site. And in conjunction with all of that is the fatal error protection. So instead of seeing the white screen of death in WordPress 5.2, there's fatal error protection. So when a fatal error is detected, a user-facing error message is displayed and an email is sent to the administrator's email address, which I believe is the email address that's in the settings area of the WordPress back end. And this email includes a link to a new feature called recovery mode. And within this recovery mode, administrators can deactivate a theme or a plugin to maintain a working version of the site. They can fix the problem if they have the technical capabilities to do so, and then afterwards reactivate the theme or plugin, or they could file a support request with the developer pointing out the error. And administrators can exit the recovery mode with a button that's always displayed. I think it's in the admin bar. So there you go. I mean, and there's a whole list of accessibility improvements, couple new dashboard icons, privacy policy page. Say that 15 times fast. There's some enhancements there. Yeah, by and large, you get the PHP issues and the fatal error protection and the site health checks.
None of my sites will ever pass the site health check.
You're never going to get 100%.
No, I'll never.
Your site will always be sick.
Yeah, that's right. And that's where I think I get it's really great that the feature is in core now, because it is important to draw attention to all of the weird little ways that you may have forgotten that your WordPress install isn't as healthy or as good as maybe that it should be. It's really, really awesome that plugins like Jetpack and everything have a home to be able to put those things now. Because, like, for example, everything at Sandhills has some version of a utility or a tools type of page that has a big text area that just outputs some information to sort of already show the health of the system, and we use that to generate logs and to help with support requests and things like that. And we've always had to include that version or some version of that page in every plugin. EDD has one, Sugar Calendar has one, Affiliate WP, Restrict Content Pro. They all have the same version of their own utility for this. So this finally means that all plugins have a proper home to put that content, which has never existed before, which seems a little silly that it's taken this long for this to exist, but it's really, really nice to have that there. But I think I agree that the site health UI will need some tweaking over time to try and shift the messaging away from it being like good or bad or healthy or sick or whatever, to being something that has, I mean, probably proper warning levels that this is actually really important or this isn't that important, and to try and reveal the importance of these things to then kind of rate the scoring appropriately, because
Do you
the
believe
site,
it? Do you think that there should be scoring at all, or should it just tell
I
you
don't
of
know.
potential issues?
I don't know, because like the there's one warning that comes up that I know that all of my sites fail on, is having plugins that are just not active, that are just sitting dormant in the WP content / plugins directory. Like, most of my installs have tons of plugins that are sitting in there uninstalled or not, or like unactive, deactivated, because I'll install something, I'll test with it, it'll sit there, and I just won't remove it because who cares? And maybe I'll get around to removing it, but it's not hurting anything by being there. Like, it'll ping out and ask for updates and whatever else, but like, it being there doesn't help or hurt anything. So like, why would that impact my score negatively? I get that, like,
What about
you
the
don't want to
security
have,
aspects of that?
if it's not active and if site owners don't have the ability to activate plugins themselves, then
Okay.
it's kind of, it doesn't really matter, I guess. Like, if someone has access to the file system to run code, then there are like other bigger security issues at bay than just having the dormant code sitting there doing nothing. I get that, like, there's a footprint and you want to minimize the attack vector for things, all those things I get, but do we really need to be able, should WordPress be telling users, hey, like, you have a Kismet sitting in there or Hello Dolly sitting in there not active, now you're going to fail because you have Hello Dolly deactivated? I don't know. Kind of doesn't seem right to me that we would have plugins bundled in core and then have people not have those plugins active and then have them fail a site health check because they have plugins that are not active. So either you delete them and then WordPress reinstalls them on an update, or you activate them and now you have to have them, which is a little dubious too. So there's some
Which, by
little
the way,
kinks
somebody
and
brought
quirks
that
in
up, and
there.
I thought it was interesting. Where we tell people to, uh, limit the attack vector, get rid of code on your website that you're not using. So let's say you're not using any of the default themes. I mean, leave one, of course, but you could delete all the others. But once you update to a major version of WordPress, here they're all coming back to you.
Right.
All, let's say, I don't know, 6, 7. I don't know how many are
Just growing.
default
It will
themes
never.
over
There
here.
will never be less. There's just, the years are going to keep going. I think WordPress only installs the most recent 5 or something. There was discussion about that, but I don't remember what happens. But like, none of this is perfect, but it is a really amazing, really good, super good steps all in the right direction. But did you remember seeing somewhere the like health check used Wapoos, that there were like Wapoo icons for?
No.
Didn't I feel like maybe we talked about that on the show? There was like a sick Wapoo icon and a happy, healthy Wapoo icon. There was
No,
something that used
somebody might
that.
have created a plugin
Yeah.
to do that, but which I think is pretty funny. So it's
Yeah.
right on. So one of the coolest conferences that have been taking place over the past few years is a virtual one called WordSesh, and WordSesh is back this year for the 6th
Woohoo.
installment. Registration is open, and Pantheon seems to be the big sponsor of this event. And thanks to Pantheon, those who attend the conference live will be able to watch all of the sessions for free. So WordSesh this year has 14 speakers with topics that include the benefits of being the first to market with the Gutenberg user course, 3 ways to embrace the entrepreneurial roller coaster, and the rhythms of remote teams. Now, 10 of the presentations will be live with 4 pre-recorded sessions, and WP Sessions will actually transcribe each presentation live, and they'll also store the recording so that registered members can view them at a later date. And the other cool thing about WP Sessions is some of the watch parties that take place across the world. There's one in Minneapolis, in fact, at the Pantheon office, one in Mumbai, and there's one in Palm Beach, Florida. And if you're hosting a watch party, you're encouraged to get in touch with the WordSesh folks on the WordSesh website and let them know. WordSesh 6 will begin May 22nd at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on Crowdcast.
And I don't want to put any pressure on anybody, but my wonderful wife, Carrie, is one of the speakers for WordSesh this year. She's going to be talking about support. Amongst the other wonderful, beautiful, shiny faces that will be giving talks at WordSesh this year, Carrie is one of them. So hopefully, be sure to tune in and check it out.
I'm gonna tune in and see if I can't troll a little bit in the comments.
I would expect nothing less.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. Your wife getting involved with WordSesh. Awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
We mentioned Jetpack earlier. Jetpack 7.3 was released a few days ago, and this is a major version for the plugin. As we mentioned before, it does integrate with WordPress 5.2's new site health checks. It includes a status check and moves Jetpack's legacy debug data into a new section, to a section of the new site health info tab. So it's kind of better organizing of the information. There's also a new membership block that's available for Jetpack beta testers. And it's kind of a weird name for this block. It's more of a, as Sarah mentions in the article, it's more of like a recurring donation type block. So I think they might have to change the title of this block for memberships to something else. But then I also thought it was cool on how they implemented this, where they have a Jetpack has a Jetpack_beta_blocks constant for users. And if you turn that on, you can actually access the blocks that are meant for beta testing within the plugin, which I thought was nice.
Nice but scary. It's like a very frequent beta tester of all things myself, from iOS, macOS apps, and everything else. That the Jetpack team is going to have to be really, really, really careful with this, because if they get people flipping the flag and then change the way that blocks work and they start breaking rendering on people's sites, could be a really terrible thing. So I'm sure they're really smart and they figured this out, and this is done in a way that is safe and effective for them. But it's risky. So hopefully, I just be careful if you're going to flip that flag, because who knows what's hidden underneath it.
And as you can imagine, there's many updates that have gone across all sorts of different modules in Jetpack. But I do want to bring your attention to one that I frequently use and now can no longer use because they've removed it. But the after the deadline module, the grammar and spell checking module, which used the after the deadline service, which is an automatic owned company or service. They've owned it for probably at least 10 or 11 years now.
At least.
And they have decided to just retire it. So I'm starting to wonder if it hasn't been confirmed yet, but it certainly looks like after the deadline is on its way to being sunsetted. And if we get confirmation of that, I'll write about it on the Tavern. We'll share it with you, our listeners. But if you are using or rely on the after the deadline grammar and spell checker, heads up, you may want to look for an alternative if you haven't already. And this might be my opportunity to check out Grammarly. I know that's a big one that everybody uses.
It bums me out because I remember when after the deadline was acquired, and there's a lot of excitement around it, and it had a lot of updates. I think it was even...
Here's a pop quiz. Do you know the gentleman's name who created after the deadline?
I don't anymore.
Raphael Mudge.
Raphael.
Very smart guy.
And so I think after the deadline might have been open sourced or hosted on WordPress.org somewhere. I think the repo is there, hidden amongst some of the others that don't get a ton of love, like the Jetpack's image automatic image cropping and stuff is somewhere on WordPress.org, and Backpress is still lurking around there. So I think after the deadline was there, but he was really the only one who was working on it. It hasn't seen updates or anything in a while. So I think it makes a lot of sense to sunset this, but really cool piece of software. So it's sad to watch it go.
Yeah, at one time after the deadline, it wasn't just grammar and spell checking, but it did context analysis. It did all kinds of
Mhm.
crazy stuff in the background
And
to improve your writing.
And there really isn't anything that I could find that is equivalent to it, that is open source, that is GPL licensed, that you could plug in to something and use as like. There's a lot of different search engines, Elasticsearch and so on, but like, what is there that you could install on a server somewhere yourself to do like sentiment analysis or contextual awareness of, like, you're not just grammar, but like you said, like kind of everything. There isn't really anything that I could find that, like, the only thing that comes up is after the deadline. There isn't anything else. So hopefully, I mean, you mentioned Grammarly. I haven't checked them out either, but there isn't anything else that it kind of did what after the deadline did.
Well, I need it. I need grammar checking. I need spell checking. I need punctuation checking. I need just make sure I'm doing something right checking, because
Right. No,
I
that's
just I
why.
just I just like that little bit of peace of mind that those things give me when
Mhm.
it shows me things I may have missed, or I just
One
I'm
of the
not
things,
equipped to do, even though I've been writing for so
right.
long. I still don't. Where's
Mhm.
the comma go? Where does this thing go? Where does that thing go?
One of the things I always struggle with writing is I have a tendency to switch up my tenses, like sentence to
Oh,
sentence.
yeah.
And
Past
I've
tense,
done
previous tense, current tense, future tense.
I can very clearly remember being in like third grade and and having my third grade English teacher like, this isn't, none of this is right, and being like, well, I don't, and like I still struggle with it now, even though I know, and that means every tweet, every blog post, like I go through and editorialize all of them to like look at all of the tenses for everything and be like, how did I screw this up when I was typing it? Like, what is my brain doing with these while I'm writing it, that I write it this way even in the first place? So having something that would catch all that is really useful. Did you see I recently started following a gentleman that works at Microsoft that had tweeted that Microsoft Word now is going to start making recommendations or auto-correcting like gender-specific pronouns. So if you say "Hey guys," it'll it'll make recommendations to change away, like to swap those out for
I did
things that
not see
are.
that, but that doesn't surprise me.
It's like stuff like that that is a useful tool to have in the background of like, try and improve the communication and writing for things that for rules that we can't all always be paying attention to and
Clippy will
have on
come out
the
of nowhere and
forefront.
say, "Yo, there's more than just guys out there. Remember, hello."
Hopefully, I mean, sometimes that you need that. I think that's okay. Sometimes that's what you meant to say, but it needs to get smarter. But it's all steps in the right
That's
direction.
why you don't say howdy guys or howdy gals. You say howdy folks.
It's y'all. Yeah,
Or
everything's
y'all. There you go.
y'all
Yeah,
for me
y'all. Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Y'all works.
yeah.
And I believe I've heard that. I'm pretty sure that's Matt's standard greeting is howdy y'all.
Howdy, y'all. Yeah.
So there's actually, speaking of, there's been a lot of major releases lately, and this one has a lot of developers excited as well. But Advanced Custom Fields 5.8.0 has been released. And this is a big release because it introduces a PHP framework for creating Gutenberg blocks. So what this means is you don't really necessarily have to know JavaScript to create a block. You can use the templating system in Advanced Custom Fields 5.8.0 and create a Gutenberg block with just PHP. So the new block is an add-on. It's built on top of Advanced Custom Fields Pro, integrates with custom fields so developers can create custom solutions. And the blocks are rendered using a PHP template file or a callback function that allows full control of the output HTML and live previews while editing the blocks. And it also maintains native compatibility with WordPress core, meaning that Gutenberg features such as alignment and reusable blocks work as expected. And there's a tweet that Sarah linked to in the post. It's by Sam Kent. And within a half hour, he created a ACF block that is looks like staff. So it's got 3 columns, images of the staff members with bios and all kinds of other stuff. And it's pretty cool when developers can whip that kind of stuff up and within 30 minutes without necessarily knowing or having to be required to know JavaScript.
It's awesome. It's helpful. It's a completely different approach to building blocks. I know
He's
that
saving a lot of developers
right.
a lot of time.
I remember Gary, friend of the show, Gary Pendergast, had tweeted something months ago about block registration and having blocks in PHP, kind of just specifically without writing any JavaScript. But maybe someone took that and ran with it. Who knows? Like, it's nice to see alternatives that are in different languages other than JavaScript, not just specific to PHP, but who knows, maybe we'll see other blocks being made in other languages other than anything. Like, I'd like to see some Python blocks. Would be kind of sweet to be able to pull that in and register it and get things included in there. I think it's all possible eventually. So,
and I know on the article, David McCann commented, he says, quote, "This shows that the WordPress core team could implement a PHP block API if they wanted to. Doing so would make block creation accessible to more developers. I hope they get inspired," end quote. So I guess there's not an actual way of creating blocks through a PHP API in core right now, which I think is another reason why this is such a valuable thing for developers.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So there you go. Check that out if you're interested. And I brought this up. WP Track Search. This is an Elasticsearch powered search interface for WordPress track tickets. This is a little project created by William Earnhardt, who works over at Bluehost, and it's sort of it's an alternative to searching track. And if you've ever visited WordPress core track, it's had some improvements over the years, but it's still, you can still easily get lost and not figure out or not know where you're going. You can get lost. So this is a nice interface. So on the left-hand side, if you visit the tracksearch.wpteamhub.com, and of course we'll have links to this in the show notes. On the left-hand side, you've got some selectors where you can select a milestone, a component, a focus. And on the right-hand side, you can see it sort of update in real time, and it uses colors. You can browse between open, closed, and all tickets. And if you click on a specific ticket, it will a modal will pop up with what it actually looks like on core track. And that's something William says he's going to be working on, but he says right now that's sort of the best implementation he can have, because it's a lot easier than switching between core and his site, which I agree.
It reminds me of Ryan McHugh last year, or maybe 2 years ago now, had made a GitHub style.
Not Track.
That's right, Not Track. It reminds me a lot of Not Track.
William actually borrowed some code from Ryan McHugh's project to help with some of the UI that deals with parsing track links and code blocks. So there you go.
There it is. Yeah, because it's just it's really smart to have alternatives to this. I was looking at like the latest version of Nginx, and Nginx uses track also, and they use like an unmodified track. So it's just a right out of the box track install for kind of managing the issues and tickets and the project releases for Nginx. And it was like very quickly reminded, like, oh man, track is not necessarily the nicest looking or like friendliest piece of software for pulling stuff in and out of years and years worth of issues and tickets and milestones and stuff. Like, I really like track for WordPress and the little tiny tweaks that we've made to it stylistically and functionally speaking, but the out of the box track experience really is a little clunky. So seeing a GitHubized or a modernized UI on top of it is really, really refreshing.
And you can find WP Track Search. It is available on GitHub, where ideas and code contributions are highly encouraged. And definitely check it out if you get the chance. I was browsing around through there and I was looking at tickets from 10 years ago, and I was seeing names that I haven't heard or seen those people, in 10 years. And I was just kind of wondering what those folks are up to these days. Who knows?
I think about that
They've moved
sometimes
on to
too.
greener pastures, maybe.
I was impressed at how fast that the WP track search, like all of the web and the UI, is when you're clicking around from thing to thing. Like clicking on any of the tabs or any of the filters is really, really quick. Kind of feels faster to me than track itself is. So I need to take a deeper look into how this is set up and working, because I bet it's probably pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, and one of the features on this that is pretty nice is that it supports fuzzy matching, which allows it to deliver more relevant results. And even if a term is misspelled, it will still show results that it finds relevant to the misspelled word. So that's pretty nice.
That's pretty sweet.
So congrats to Earnhardt for releasing this. It started off as a toy, just something he was messing with, and then he said he kept running into situations where it would have been really nice to have something that was a little more fleshed out that he could use to search and navigate track. And so he buckled down and made this and released it. And now he's got a couple things he's working on, but so far it works pretty well.
My first track ticket was closed as a duplicate 11 years ago.
I'm not surprised. Oh, you know why? Because the search didn't work as well back then, so you didn't know.
That is ironically exactly what happened. But like, track doesn't really do a super good job of making that easy to find. Like, finding your own tickets is a report. You have to know that it is a report. You have to think to click into reports, and then find your tickets by like creator, I think, or whatever. Like they uses weird words too that maybe we don't use in the community for things, but like the WP track search really exposes things like this, makes it easy to filter by recently updated, least recently updated, newest, oldest, open, closed. You can clear all the filters out on the top. I mean, it really is straightforward. It's pretty slick.
And that's unless you have anything else. I mean, I don't have anything else, major topics. I mean, so last week I did mention the fact that I perhaps was going to talk about some things that was going on in my life. So if all you care about is news, you can end the show right now. But if you want to hear what's going on, then feel free to continue listening. But so
I think it's important to talk about the meta things for the show and for you. I think that's important.
Well, the past. Geez, I don't want to dive into this 1 hour thing, so I'll try and make it short. But as of late, I've been in a bad place lately with the past few months, both emotionally and sometimes not really emotionally, but mentally, emotionally, physically. And I've been really struggling with writing and trying to find a place on the tavern, and just trying to do things to have a purpose, to have meaning. And I read a tweet the other day that said not having a purpose or struggling to find a purpose in your work can lead to burnout just as much as overworking, which is like, wow, that really hit me where it hurts, or it really resonated with me, I should say, where it hurts. But that's something I've been struggling with, and I've been struggling with sleeping, and I've been struggling with alcohol, and I've been trying to drink less, and I've been using alcohol sort of as a coping mechanism for work and for sleeping, and I've actually made some improvement with that lately. And I went a few months without posting anything, and I'd end up slacking on the show notes. So I've actually had a couple conversations with some people, and I came very close to just finally hanging it up and walking away, because I felt like there was nothing I could do. There's nothing more I could contribute to the tavern. And to be quite honest, I'm not happy with my writing on the tavern, what it's become. I'm not happy. I don't like being a journalist. I don't like writing news stories and like Ben Stein's dry eye, clear eye voice. And sometimes I feel like when I'm writing a news story that you have to be dry, you have to be accurate. There's no personality, there's no soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what the tavern's become. Now, look, Sarah Gooding has done tremendous work on the site. She has really elevated the level of journalism and accuracy of the tavern. But she's right, that WordPress has been around now for so many years, and there needs to be a industry type source that's serious and to cover it. And she does an excellent job of that. And that's just not something it's not something I'm good at. It's not the kind of writing I like. I like the good old days where I could write about the narrative in one blog post and not have to have the whole story and not have to have quotes and all this stuff you'd have to add on to a post. But I guess the days of just blogging and saying what you want on a whim are over, especially when you're on a site or you want the site to be treated as a sort of more official industry source of content and news. But so what I've done is I've talked to a few people. I've talked to John, and John has mentioned this idea a number of times. I've talked to Sarah, and she's given me the idea. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to do 3 different podcasts during the week. One's going to be a daily show that I do with Malcolm Peralty called Pressing Topics. I've already published episode 1. You can find that on the Tavern. That's going to be a very, very short type of show where we cover the headlines of the day. And then on Fridays, I'm hoping to do a podcast called WP After Hours, which we actually started doing before, and it was just kind of a thing where we'd hang up. And I'm actually gonna try and at least for 1 hour, invite people from the community onto the show and literally give them a voice, a platform to voice. Let us know what projects you're working on, or just gather around and just see what's going on. It'd be kind of like a video audio-based forum for an hour. So I'm going to work on that in addition to the WordPress Weekly that you are listening to now. And I'm going to be, apparently I'm better at talking about WordPress than I am at writing it. I'm pretty proud of what I've accomplished with WordPress Weekly, and what these shows allow me to do is to be myself. And I can't necessarily write in the way that I talk, but I can talk in the way that I talk. So that's what I'm going to be doing here on these podcasts. Now, that doesn't mean I won't be writing anything on the Tavern. I still got to write a couple of articles or whatever I see fit on the site. But hopefully now with these shows, I'm attracting or going after an audience that Sarah really has no interest in pursuing. And this gives me purpose. It keeps me busy, gives me something to do every day, which is if you're trying to cut off on bad addictions like alcohol, keeping busy and having things to do and having purpose really helps out with that.
That's right. Like
that's what I'm going to be doing here in the near future.
And I think that's the right move. Like, well, the one constant with WordPress Weekly has always been you. I mean, not to state the obvious, but between co-hosts and someday there will be a different co-host for WordPress Weekly. I will have a good time and appreciate my time on the show, but you are better at this than anyone else has been, and is obvious to everyone that like this is where your talent lies. I think like you're really good at keeping the conversation going. You're good at asking good questions that actually kind of cater to follow-up questions and keep a conversation going. Those are things that I know that I'm not good at, that I can't do. And being able to recognize your strengths and weaknesses and knowing when to shut up and let somebody else do the job that there is to get done is kind of part of the job. So like recognizing that Sarah is a fantastic journalist and a really good writer, and she does inflect her own kind of humor or version of writing. Everybody that is a writer does, but when you and I were talking about this, the kind of other advice that I remember giving you that I think is worthwhile to maybe our listeners is that like you really experienced writer's block. Like when someone says that they have writer's block, I believe that is not just for writing. That is for musicians. That is for writing code. That is for whatever the thing is that you should be doing, that for whatever reason you are kind of just locked up. You are
And
paralyzed
by
from
the way,
actually.
it gets progressively worse. If
It
you go a
does.
day
That's
or
right.
two without writing and you're experiencing writer's block,
Yep.
it gets progressively worse, and it gets harder to get out of
Right.
that rut.
There's like a bunch of ways that it goes bad. Like you write and then you don't like what you wrote, so then you feel bad.
Oh
Or
yeah,
then you don't write and then you can feel the pressure of everyone's eyes looking at you, wondering why you're not writing. So then you're just afraid to write because you don't want your output to not look like it was worth 2 days worth of writing. So then you end up writing nothing. And then that just kind of perpetuates in a bunch and manifests itself in like a bunch of weird ways where you are literally just blocked. You are stopped and paralyzed from completing the tasks that you need to complete. Like, and I think that frankly, when people are in those kinds of positions, if it's with, your job, your life, your, relationship, your whatever it is, your projects that you're working on or what, anything, that where you can't get out of that by yourself. Like if you're alone struggling with the problem, then you will always be alone struggling with the problem. Like you need help, someone, a friend or a partner or your boss or coworker or somebody.
a friend not named alcohol.
That's right. Right. Needs to be able to unstick you, like however that needs to happen. And most of the time, the majority of the time, the solution is just confronting the thing. Like if it's whatever the thing is just confronting it and moving on from the thing. Um, but I think it takes a lot of, courage and, to change what it is that you're working on and doing, and to really focus on and double down on the things that you're good at, because you will only continue to get better at those things. Like one weekly podcast, I feel like is not enough Jeffro for the world. You're better at it
Apparently not.
than doing it only on Wednesdays. Like one of the things that I really would
But by the
love.
way, John in our discussion says, you should be the Jenny Carson of WordPress.
That's Johnny is like, I grew up watching Johnny, and
Here's Jeffro.
so I know, right. That's right. That's right. And I know that like he has Johnny Carson's like personal life is one of those like not super healthy topics. That's one of those things that makes you not necessarily like a person. But as a late night TV show host, he was just really good at it, and you're kind of similar, I think, to you're able to bring humor, you're able to make people laugh, you're able to make people feel comfortable on the show, and that's and you're educated about the topics, like and you're willing to spend the time to make the show be good for the listeners, and it's just you doing it. But there isn't any reason why WordPress won't get to a size, and plugins and themes and the economy and the ecosystem isn't already, frankly, at a size where a daily show with different guests, somewhat relatively highly curated with some writers, some ideas, like these are things that could happen, that should be happening, and you're the most equipped and the most experienced in the space to do it. Like there's opportunity there to put together really fun, really nice daily shows, that other, video games have that. Other Apple has people do daily Apple podcasts all the time. Like there are franchises like Star Wars, Magic the Gathering. Like there are tons of like things that people are passionate about where they do daily shows about the things that are going and happening. And like you're the person to do that. So
Well, that's
it
what I've
makes
started. I've
me.
started with pressing topics. In fact, I got to do episode 2 later today, and it's going to be a work in progress. So we're going to start out with a sort of a baseline, and we'll see what it evolves into. And I'm looking forward to some of our Friday night hangouts as well. And now
It's been a long time since I've been on a Friday night show. It's been probably 10 years, I bet, since I tuned in.
It's been a long time since we've actually done a WordPress after hours, but I've got Jeff Manson on board. He's going to be helping me out with that, with the moderation, because when you open it up to the public, the inevitable happens, and sometimes you got to take care of those people, take care of those trolls. But I do want to send a shout out and a humble thank you to everybody who reached out and, quite frankly, tried to get in touch with me because they thought something happened to me when they didn't see my post, when they didn't see when they saw that there wasn't a new episode of WordPress Weekly for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and there weren't new articles on the site. They legitimately thought something happened to me. Right. But I'm here. I'm safe. I'm sound. Hopefully, I'm on the other side of this lull, and things will be looking up for me. And I know Stephen Cronin and Justin. I wrote a post about what I'm going to be doing on jeffc.me. If you want to check it out, I call it the last ditch effort, but other people say no. You're just finally finding your purpose, finding out what you should have been doing all along. And and they say that not everything has to be neutral and unbiased journalism. There's plenty of room for opinionated editorial pieces. Just make sure they're marked as opinion or editorial pieces.
That too, right?
And Justin Tadlock, who has worked in the journalism space himself, he says that editorials are a time-honored tradition of journalism. Too many people think journalists must write unbiased stories that just prevent facts and quotes. That should be true for news articles, but journalism is broader than that. And he says he'd like to see the Tavern become more of a blend of the kind of hobbyist, regular Joe editorials along with the news stories that he believes that would provide a better balance. And I've also had other people comment to me on Twitter that they've noticed the same things I've noticed on the Tavern, and they would like for me to put the soul back into into what the Tavern is. So that's what I'm going to be trying to do, and that's what I'm going to be working on. And there's actually some people who have said they're looking forward to hearing from me daily. So how about that? So you can check out all the episodes. All the podcasts will be on WPTavern.com. In fact, this morning I created a new category called podcasts, and WordPress Weekly, Pressing Topics, and WP After Hours will all be housed in their own categories under that the podcasting segment on the site. And I tell you what, we need to redesign the Tavern because I was just going to bring that up. Under the teeth.
That's right. I mean, especially now that you're going to have kind of separate real categories or arms of content that are happening, courtesy of the Tavern. There needs to be a type of design that brings those out instead of hides them all in one kind of river. So I agree. Maybe along with that, we'll bring the forums back.
Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that this will keep me busy. This will allow me to talk to more people, establish more of a community feeling around the site with the different shows. And then if we could implement and bring the forums onto the site, man, we got a lot of good things cooking in the oven.
Yeah, the forums converted fine. Good. I've got all of the old vBulletin forums converted to bbPress, so they came over okay. So that's one step in the right direction.
So that's what I'm working on. Hopefully the better life, better health, better shows, more Jeffro. Everybody needs more Jeffro in their life, right? Yeah.
I think so.
All right, so that's going to do it for me and this episode of WordPress Weekly. You can find show notes for this episode and all other episodes on WPTavern.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at JeffroJeffR0, where you never know what I'm going to tweet with my 280 characters that they give me.
I just tweet about lowercase p's now. Exclusively.
All right. And how can people follow you if they're really so inclined to do so?
Twitter and GitHub at JJJ or JJJ.blog.
All right. So enjoy Carrie's day. Happy birthday, Carrie.
I'll let her know.
Thank you. I'd rather be on her good side than any other side.
That's right.
And good luck at the doctor on Thursday, whatever
it'll be
happening there. And we'll talk to you and everybody else next Wednesday afternoon. Until then, say bye, John.
Bye, John.